Good morning. Let's have basic science technology for JSS 1 today, and we'll look at the topic drug abuse. Drug abuse. At home, when we are sick, there are things our parents give to us. So when we use them, we can regain our strength and our health back. Those things given to us might be in form of food or drugs. Drugs like paracetamol, Novagil, all those are drugs. But today we'll talk more on the meaning and also the groups of drugs that we have and what those groups stand for. You might have also probably noticed some people in your community who engages in excessive drinking or smoking. At times, some of them will be under the influence of alcohol, and because of that, they will begin to suffer mental imbalance or possibly abnormal behavior. Even some, they go about begging for money, and when they get that money, they quickly spend it in drinking or smoking. Anyone that does that are said to be under the influence of drugs. So it is not actually a good thing. So let's look at our learning outcomes for this class. So by the end of the lesson, you should be able to define drugs, group drugs into 4 categories, and lastly, explain at least 2 categories of drugs. Define drugs, you should group drug into categories, and explain at least 2 categories of drugs. Let's look at the meaning of drug. Meaning of drug. A drug is any substance other than food which some people take for the physical and mental influences it has on them. When we take drug, anything that is other than food we take into our mouth, it is called drug. When we take drug, we take it for the physical and mental influences it's going to have on us. If you're having headache, you tend to take paracetamol, and after taking that, you will be relieved of whatever pain you're going through. So, drug is being taken for the physical and mental influences it will have on any individual. Another definition on our screen right now says drug can also be referred to any substance which, when taken into the body system, affect the health either negatively or positively. Like I said before, some people, excess taking of drug can help make them to be under the influence of that drug, and before you know, they suffer mental imbalance and abnormal behavior. So the drug we take have mental influence on it. It can either be in the negative form, which will help us to relieve us of any pain. Positively form, it will help us to relieve us of any pain. Then the negative part will make us to begin to have some abnormal behavior, which is not really good for our health. So let's look at the categories of drugs that we have. On our screen right now, we say there are 4 groups of drugs that affect the mind and behavior of people. And these are the following categories of drugs that we have. We have the sedatives, we have stimulants, we have hallucinogens, and we have narcotics. I'll take it again. Sedatives, stimulants, hallucinogens, and narcotics. These are the groups of drugs that we have. Drugs can actually be categorized into these 4 groups. We'll take the meaning one after the other. Let's look at the meaning of sedatives. Sedatives are drugs that relax the mind and induce sleep. When an individual finds it difficult to sleep, if you take any drugs that has some chemicals in them that can help you to sleep, you call it sedatives. In our next class, we'll be mentioning some drugs that contains this type of components that we're talking about. But today we are just going to look at the meaning. So any drugs that relax the mind and induce sleeps are called sedatives. You take any drugs and after taking it you begin to sleep, they are sedatives. Though some medicine or drugs are not made for us to be sleeping, but due to one reason or the other that are best known to our health, we might fall asleep after taking them. Let's look at the meaning of hallucinogens. Hallucinogens are drugs that provokes fantasy, just make you happy unnecessarily, begin to talk unnecessarily. You see people going on the street, they begin to hallucinate, they talk to themselves without the presence of nobody. They begin to talk, make description, use their hand, describe on the air, do a whole lot of things that seems very unreasonable. So when you talk to yourself under the influence of drugs, the drug you've taken can be termed or grouped under this name, hallucinogens. So any drugs that provokes fantasy, unnecessary talking are called hallucinogens. And lastly, I would like us to look at the meaning of narcotics. Narcotics are drugs that block the senses and reduce pain. Some people, when they are going through some things in their life, they are going through some pains, maybe some pains of losing a beloved one, people that are depressed, bereaved, they are tend to take drugs that are narcotics. When they take them, it will block their sense of reasoning. They won't reason anything again, they won't think of the pain they are going through. It will help them reduce pain and they will just be on their own. And the bad side of this drug is that it does not last forever. If you keep on taking drugs just to block your senses and reduce pain, it have a negative effect on you, because after some time, after a while, the drug will definitely have its expired time in your head. The drug will stop blocking your senses and the pain will come back. So it's of no use taking narcotics. Then I studied that if you keep on taking it and you keep on blocking your senses, it will get to a time that your brain might get damaged, and I believe that's not what we want. So every drug has its own negative influence and also positive influence. That is just it. Let's look at our summary and our conclusion. In summary and conclusion, most drugs are useful when administered under medical instruction, but when administered outside medical instruction, they can be very harmful to both the user and the society. It can be very harmful to the person using it and also society at large, because when you take drugs and it's affecting you negatively, the society is also at risk, because they begin to hallucinate, they talk on their own, they possess some abnormal behavior, they become a mental imbalance, they begin to beg, and when they beg and get money, they also spend it in drinking and smoking, and these are not too good for our health. In our next class, we'll be looking at the uses and also the side effects of drug. So my assignment is this: explain drug and substance abuse. I would love to have your response, your feedback, so I can mark. Then we'll continue the class from there. Thank you. See you next time. Thanks.